Hello and welcome to the Revolutionary Radio Project. I'm your host, Rob Skiba, and I'm excited to be joined once again by my friend and co-host for our Quest for Truth series on the Book of Genesis, Zen Garcia. Zen, are you there, sir?
I am, brother. Good to be here with you again.
Yeah, man. How's it been for you the last week?
Really good. Just been busy. Been focused a lot on crypto and learning a lot of different things about staking and the coins that pay the highest and the wallets to use when staking certain coins. And it seems that those are the ones that are being bought up a lot by whoever is coming into the market right now. And so it's been a learning experience for sure.
Yeah, I just did a show. I re-uploaded the show that I pre-recorded for last week. That I did an interview with Robbie Davidson and Paul Lindbergh. But
I listened to it.
I'd like to do a show with you because I know you have a different point of view on some of this. So maybe if you're open to it, maybe next week or something, we can do a show just on that, because I know you've gone down a different path and have a different opinion on some of that stuff. So yeah, I'm pretty new to all of it. So I just I want to know as much as I can.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I've been watching the space since 2017. I have an uncle and a couple of cousins that are deeply into it, even more than I had been, and so they've given me hint on certain projects. Definitely as far as the staking, those coins seem to be of great interest to a lot of people. I know people got into Hex because of that, and also I know a lot of people like Axion, like Robbie and
Paul.
Paul and Patricia, and so I like Axion too. Just not involved in it, only because I focused on Wise, and the reason being is because none of the money went to the developers. It was all a public auction, and everything was equal status for everybody. The small person to the whale that has a lot of money, and everybody got equal access and equal stake, and so. But I think Axion will do really well as well.
It's already doing tremendously well. I mean, just kind of watching the stakes and the interest rate. Although, if you heard the end of the broadcast, I was talking about how, I was thinking, I had a couple $1,000, so I was like, okay, I'm gonna play around with this a little bit. And so, when I got in there to stake, I'm thinking, well, I'll stake 2,000, right? But I wasn't paying attention. I wasn't reading close enough that you were staking 2,000 Axiom.
Ethereum.
Not
Axiom.
Yeah, Axiom, not which is like 15 cents or something.
Yeah.
So I staked like 15 cents out for like 20 years or 15 years, whatever the maximum.
Oh my goodness.
Five days, And Robbie, he's like, okay, like he didn't say anything because he was on the line with me live while I was doing it, because he was walking me through the process. And then after I'd already done a few, because I was staking out a ladder, figuring like, 15 years, 10 years. And
right.
And then I'm looking at it afterwards, and I'm like, wait a second. Oh my goodness. I was staking at 2,000 Axion, not $2,000. And I was paying, because
gas fees.
It's like between 15 cents or 60. I forget what it was, but it was less than $1, whatever it was. But the gas fees, I was paying more for the gas fees than what I was.
Oh, sure.
And then so I didn't get a negative deal because I did a 30-day one, and it cost $15 to unstake like 10 cents.
Right.
I was like, okay, well, you learn hard.
Goodness. Yeah, you learn
by mistakes.
Right.
But Bitcoin's been is back up again. Looks like it's like 37,000, I think, today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's
for a few days it was like dipping down.
Yeah, it went down to 30,000, and I put you on the list, but I sent out.
Yeah, that was
everybody should buy the dip. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a long email. It's like I kept scrolling and scrolling. I'm like, okay, I'll get back to that later.
Oh no, the latter part was just for the new people, and I try to keep the messages really short, but the information for the new people is after, and it has all the some of the prior information that I've talked about, and
Oh,
the different suggestions that I made. That one coin I told you about, DOT, it went up 41% today.
wow. It's amazing. People want to poo-poo it. I'm like, look, you need to be more concerned about what you're doing with your fiat currency, because
Yeah, right.
look, like it or not, and we're not all about trying to get rich or anything like that. It's just diversifying and protecting your assets for the future in uncertain times, because man, the least secure thing right now is the US dollar.
Absolutely. And it's being devalued.
Yeah.
They are printing nonstop. Like, what was it, 25% was printed just this year? I mean, that's a lot of devaluation.
Yeah, that's crazy. And the fact that gold and silver didn't really move that much just proves that that's being grossly manipulated.
Right, absolutely. And people are now, those that have been large gold holders, because it costs to hold gold, like in a vault or in a secure place, and it's not easy to move it or to sell it. They're moving, 5% of their portfolio into Bitcoin, which is digital gold, and can be moved, quickly across borders and sent for pennies on the dollar, so.
Well, that's the thing. I knew somebody that had moved down to, I think it was Panama, and she was down there for a few years and then had to come back. But she was a big into silver and gold, and she had brought all that with her when she moved down there. But trying to move, I mean, that's, first of all, it's heavy.
Right.
And I mean, when you're trying to travel, especially through dangerous territory, with that kind of value, I mean, because you have to have, depending on how much you have. If you only have a little bit, it's not a big deal. But if you've got quite a bit stored up, I mean, that takes up a lot of space, and it's very heavy. And
heavy, yes.
Man, somebody sees you with that,
target.
You're a massive target.
Exactly.
Versus carrying a ledger around or something, which is just a high security thumb drive, basically.
Mm-hmm.
It's just look, people like I was saying in the show, you can lead a horse to water, you can't make them drink it. So
no, you can't.
Take it or leave it. But most of the comments that I hear from people are just frankly based on ignorance. They haven't taken the time to look into. So
right, they have no idea.
So yeah, man. If you're open, let's plan that tentatively anyway for next Wednesday. Of course,
sounds good.
We'll continue our Genesis study on your show on Thursday, but that'd be good. I was looking at where we left off, and we got into commentary toward the end of the show, so I didn't get to Jubilees. So maybe I'll start with Jubilees chapter 20, and then we'll move on. I think it's Genesis 26 or something. I think we're at, but. Yes. I'll read Jubilees and see if we can get caught up, because we're way behind on it. Yeah, we left off with Esau selling his birthright to Jacob for the lentils. Mm-hmm. That's where we left off in Genesis. So, all right, let me switch over. Jubilees chapter 20. And in the 42nd Jubilee, in the first year of the 7th week, Abraham called Ishmael and his 12 sons, and Isaac and his 2 sons, and the 6 sons of Keturah and their sons. And he commanded them that they should observe the way of the Lord, that they should work righteousness and love each other, love each his neighbor, and act on this manner amongst all men, that they should each so walk with regard to them as to do judgment and righteousness on the earth. And they should circumcise their sons according to the covenant which he had made with them, and not deviate to the right or the left of all the paths which the Lord had commanded us, and that we should keep ourselves from all fornication and uncleanness, and renounce from amongst us all fornication and uncleanness. And if any woman or maid commit fornication amongst you, burn her with fire, and let them not commit fornication with her after their eyes and their heart, and let them not take to themselves wives from the daughters of Canaan, for the seed of Canaan will be rooted out of the land. And he told them of the judgment of the giants and the judgment of the Sodomites, how they had been judged on account of their wickedness, and had died on account of their fornication and uncleanness and mutual corruption through fornication. And guard yourselves from all fornication and uncleanness, from all pollution of sin, lest you make our name a curse, and your whole life a hissing, and all your sons to be destroyed by the sword. And you became accursed like Sodom, and all your remnant as the sons of Gomorrah. I implore you, my sons, love the God of heaven, and cleave ye to all his commandments, and walk not after their idols, and after their uncleanness, and make not for yourselves molten or graven gods, for they are vanity, and there is no spirit in them, for they are work of men's hands, and all who trust them trust in nothing. Serve them not, nor worship them, but serve ye the Most High God, and worship him continually, and hope for his countenance always, and work uprightness and righteousness before him, that he may have pleasure in you, and grant you his mercy, and send rain upon you morning and evening, and bless you, and bless all your works which ye have wrought upon the earth, and bless thy bread and thy water, and bless the fruit of thy womb, and the fruit of the land, and the herds of thy cattle, and the flocks of thy sheep. And you will be for a blessing on the earth, and all nations of the earth will desire you, and bless your sons in my name, that they may be blessed as I am. And he gave to Ishmael and to his sons and to the sons of Keturah gifts, and sent them away from Isaac his son. And he gave everything to Isaac his son. And Ishmael and his sons and the sons of Keturah and their sons went together and dwelt from Paran to the entering of Babylon, in all the land which is toward the east, facing the desert. And these mingled with each other, and their name was called Arabs and Ishmaelites. So that's where we get the Arabs from. And in the 6th year of the 7th week of the Jubilee, Abraham called Isaac his son, and commanded him, saying, I am become old, and know not the day of my death, and I am full of my days. And behold, I am 175 years old, and throughout all the day of my life I have remembered the Lord, and sought with all my heart to do his will, and to walk uprightly in all his ways. My soul has hated idols, and have despised that serve them. Have those I have and given my heart and spirit, that I might observe to do the will of him who created me. For he is the living God, and he is holy and faithful, and he is righteous beyond all. And there is with him no accepting of men's persons, no accepting of gifts, for God is righteous, and executeth judgment on all those who transgress his commandments and despise his covenant. And do thou, my son, observe his commandments and his ordinance and his judgments, and walk not after the abominations, and after the graven images, and after the molten images, and eat no blood at all of animals or cattle or of any bird which flies in the heaven. And if thou dost slay a victim as an acceptable peace offering, slay ye it, and pour out its blood upon the altar, and all the fat of the offering offer on the altar with fine flour, and the meat offering mingled with oil, and its drink offering, offer them all together on the altar of burnt offering. It is a sweet savor before the Lord. And thou wilt offer the fat of the sacrifice of thank offerings on the fire, which is upon the altar, and the fat which is on the belly, and all the fat on the inwards, and the 2 kidneys, and all the fat that is upon them, and upon the loins and liver, thou shalt remove together with the kidneys. And offer all these for a sweet savor acceptable before the Lord, with its meat offering and with its drink offering for a sweet savor, the bread of the offering of the Lord. And eat its meat on that day, and on the 2nd day, and let not the sun on the 2nd day go down upon it until it is eaten, and let nothing be left over for the 3rd day, for it is not acceptable, for it is not approved. And let it no longer be eaten, and all who eat thereof will bring sin upon themselves. And thus I have found it written in the books of my forefathers, and in the words of Enoch, and in the words of Noah. This shows the law was long time in existence prior to Moses.
Absolutely.
And on all thy oblations thou shalt show salt and let not the salt of the covenant be lacking in all thy oblations before the Lord. And as regards to the wood of the sacrifices, beware lest thou bring other wood for the altar in addition to these: cypress, bay, almond, fir, pine, cedar, savin, fig, olive, myrrh, laurel, aspalathus. And of these kinds of wood lay upon the altar under the sacrifice such as have been tested as to their appearance, and do not lay thereon any split or dark wood, but hard and clean, without fault, a sound in new growth, and do not lay thereon old wood, for its fragrance is gone, and there is no longer fragrance in it as before. Besides these kinds of wood, there is none other that thou shalt place on the altar, for the fragrance is disappeared, and the smell of its fragrance does not go up to heaven. Observe these commandments and do it, my son, that thou mayest be upright in all thy deeds. And at all times be clean in thy body, and wash thyself with water before thou approachest to offer on the altar. And wash thy hands and thy feet before thou drawest near to the altar. And when thou art done sacrificing, wash again thy hands and thy feet. And let no blood appear upon you, nor upon your clothes. Be on thy guard, my son, against blood. Be on thy guard exceedingly. Cover it with dust. And do not eat any blood, for it is the soul. Eat no blood whatsoever. And take no gifts of the blood of man, lest it be shed with impunity, without judgment, for it is the blood that is shed that causes this earth to sin. And the earth cannot be cleansed from the blood of man, save by the blood of him who shed it. And take no present or gift for the blood of man, blood for blood, that thou mayest be accepted before the Lord, the Most High God, for he is the defense of the good, and that thou mayest be preserved from all evil, and that he may save thee from every kind of death. I see, my son, that all the works of the children of men are sin and wickedness, and all their deeds are uncleanness and an abomination and a pollution, and there is no righteousness in with them. Beware lest thou shouldest walk in their ways and tread in their paths and sin a sin unto death before the Most High God. Else he will hide his face from thee and give thee back into the hands of thy transgression, and root thee out of the land, and thy seed likewise from under heaven, and thy name and thy seed shall perish from the whole earth. Turn away from all their deeds and all their uncleanness, and observe the ordinance of the Most High God, and do his will, and be upright in all things. And he will bless thee in all thy deeds, and will raise up from thee a plant of righteousness throughout all the earth, throughout all generations of the earth. And my name and thy name shall not be forgotten under heaven forever. Go, my son, in peace. May the Most High God, my God, and thy God, strengthen thee to do his will. And may he bless all thy seed and the residue of thy seed for the generations forever, with all righteous blessings, that thou mayest be a blessing on all the earth. And he went out from him rejoicing. Chapter 22. And it came to pass in the first week, in the 44th Jubilee, in the second year, that is the year in which Abraham died, that Isaac and Ishmael came from the well of the oath to celebrate the Feast of Weeks, that is the feast of the first fruits of the harvest, to Abraham their father. And Abraham rejoiced because his two sons had come. For Isaac had many possessions in Beersheba, and Isaac was wont to go and see his possessions and to return to his father. And in those days Ishmael came to see his father, and they both came together, and Isaac offered a sacrifice for a burnt offering and presented it on the altar of his father, which he had made in Hebron. And he offered a thank offering and made a feast of joy before Ishmael his brother. And Rebekah made new cakes from the new grain and gave them to Jacob her son, and to take them to Abraham his father from the first fruits of the land, that he may eat and bless the Creator of all things before he died. And Isaac too sent by the hand of Jacob to Abraham a best thank offering, that he might eat and drink. And he eat and drank and blessed the Most High God, who hath created heaven and earth, who hath made all the fat things of the earth, and given them to the children of men, that they might eat and drink and bless their Creator. And now I give thanks unto thee, my God, because thou hast caused me to see this day. Behold, I am 163 years, an old man and full of days, and all my days have been unto me peace. And the sword of the adversary has not overcome me, in all that thou hast given me, and my children all the days of my life unto this day. My God, may thy mercy and thy peace be upon thy servant and upon the seed of his sons, that they may be to thee a chosen nation and an inheritance amongst all the nations of the earth, from henceforth unto all the days of the generations of the earth, unto all the ages. And he called Jacob and said, My son Jacob, may the God of all bless thee and strengthen thee to do righteousness, and his will before him, and may he choose thee and thy seed, that ye may become a people for his inheritance, according to his will always. And do thou, my son Jacob, draw near and kiss me. And he drew near and kissed him. And he said, Blessed be my son Jacob, and all the sons of God most high unto all the ages. May God give unto thee a seed of righteousness, and some of thy sons may he sanctify in the midst of the whole earth. May nations serve thee, and all the nations bow themselves before thy seed. Be strong in the presence of men, and exercise authority over all the seed of Seth. Then thy ways and the ways of thy sons will be justified, so that they shall become a holy nation. May the Most High God give thee all the blessings wherewith he has blessed me, and wherewith he blessed Noah and Adam. May they rest on the sacred head of thy seed from generation to generation forever. And may he cleanse from thee from all unrighteousness and impurity, that thou mayest be forgiven all the transgressions which thou hast committed ignorantly. And may he strengthen thee and bless thee, and mayest thou inherit the whole earth, and may he renew his covenant with thee, that thou mayest be to him a nation for his inheritance for all the ages, and that he may be to thee and to thy seed a God in truth and righteousness throughout all the days of the earth. And do thou, my son Jacob, remember my words, and observe the commandments of Abraham thy father. Separate thyself from the nations, and eat not with them, and do not according to their works, and become not their associate, for their works are unclean, and all their ways are a pollution and an abomination and uncleanness. They offer their sacrifices to the dead, and they worship evil spirits, and they eat over the graves, and all their works are vanity and nothingness. They have no heart to understand, and their eyes do not see what their works are, and how they err in saying to a piece of wood, Thou art my God, and to stone, Thou art my Lord, and thou art my deliverer, and they have no heart. And as for thee, my son Jacob, may the Most High God help thee, and the God of heaven bless thee, and remove thee from their uncleanness and from all their error. Be thou aware, my son Jacob, of taking a wife from any seed of the daughters of Canaan, for all his seed is to be routed from the earth. For owing to the transgression of Ham, Canaan erred, and all his seed shall be destroyed from off the earth, and all the residue thereof, and none springing from him shall be saved on the day of judgment. And as for all the worshippers of idols and the profane, there shall be no hope for them in the land of the living, and there shall be no remembrance of them on the earth. For they shall descend into Sheol, and into the place of condemnation shall they go. All the children of Sodom were taken away from the earth. So will all those who worship idols be taken away. Fear not, my son Jacob, and be not dismayed, O son of Abraham. May the Most High God preserve thee from destruction, and from all the paths of error may he deliver thee. This house have I built for myself, that I might put my name upon it in the earth. It is given to thee and to thy seed forever, and it will be named the house of Abraham. It is given to thee and to thy seed forever, for thou wilt build my house, and establish my name before God forever. Thy seed and thy name will stand throughout all generations of the earth. And he ceased commanding him and blessing him. And the two lay together on one bed, and Jacob slept in the bosom of Abraham, his father's father. And he kissed him 7 times, and his affection and his heart rejoiced over him. And he blessed him with all his heart, and said, The Most High God, the God of all, the creator of all, who brought me forth from Ur the Chaldees, that he might give me this land to inherit it forever, and that I might establish a whole seed, blessed be the Most High forever. And he blessed Jacob and said, My son, over whom with all my heart and my affection I rejoice. May thy grace and thy mercy be lifted up upon him and upon his seed always. And do not forsake him, nor set him at aught from henceforth unto the days of eternity. And may thine eyes be opened upon him and upon his seed, that thou mayest preserve him and bless him, and mayest sanctify him as a nation for thine inheritance, and bless him with all thy blessings from henceforth unto all the days of eternity, and renew thy covenant and thy grace with him and with his seed according to all thy good pleasure unto all the generations of the earth. And we've got a minute, well, actually about 30 seconds before we go to break. So I'll keep reading till we get caught up. These are some long prayers and blessings here. It's like one long run-on prayer and blessing, but it just shows how these books really unpack what we get in Genesis.
Mm-hmm. And I like, it shows that they were celebrating the Feast of the Tabernacles, Feast of Weeks, and all of the different feasts, Passover. It was awesome.
Okay.
As a bookstore for truth seekers, it's our goal to make ancient manuscripts which were once held captive by secretive institutions available for public consideration. In our generation, where wisdom has increased as Daniel the prophet foretold, we have access to many of the testimonies our early church brethren were persecuted for preserving. After being hidden for centuries, these manuscripts have been leaked from various sources throughout the earth, and it's our goal to gather these sources into printable form to make available for all who seek the ancient way. If you're looking to deepen your studies of the biblical narrative, find these ancient manuscripts and more at sacredwordpublishing.com.
Many truth seekers are constantly studying alone. But there is a place where we can come together. The Digital Readers Club is our online ecclesia meant for those who've forsaken churchianity but still want the closeness of a family to study with. Join us every Saturday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time to put together the puzzle pieces of truth scattered throughout the ancient scriptures. Everyday questions arise.
Are the stories in the Bible true?
What if I told you that there are hundreds of confirming witnesses,
which give intricate detail to the stories in the Bible?
Have you ever found yourself deep in the rabbit hole with questions that no one seemed to have the answers to? Join us the second Friday of every month at 9 p.m. Eastern Time for our Ask Me Anything series with author and researcher Zen Garcia, as he sheds light on the mysteries which have us all searching together.
hungry. And he said to Jacob his brother, give me of this red pottage. And Jacob said to him, sell me thy primogeniture, this birthright, and I will give thee bread, and also some of this lentil pottage. And Esau said in his heart, I shall die, of what profit to me is this birthright? And he said to Jacob, I give it to thee. And Jacob said, swear to me this day. And he sware unto him. And Jacob gave his brother Esau bread and pottage, and he eat until he was satisfied. And Esau despised his birthright. For this reason was Esau's name called Edom, on account of the red pottage, which Jacob gave him for his birthright. And Jacob became the elder, and Esau was brought down from his dignity. And the famine was over the land, and Isaac departed to go down into Egypt, and in the 2nd year of this week, and went to the king of the Philistines, to Gerar unto Abimelech. And the Lord appeared unto him, and said unto him, go not down into Egypt, dwell in the land that I shall tell thee of, and sojourn in this land, and I will be with thee, and bless thee. For to thee and to thy seed will I give all this land, and I will establish my oath, which I swear unto Abraham thy father, and I will multiply thy seed as the stars of heaven, and I will give unto thy seed all this land. And in thy seed shall all the nations of the earth be blessed, because thy father obeyed my voice, and kept my charge, and my commandments, and my laws, and my ordinances, and my covenants, and now obey my voice, and dwell in this land. And he dwelt in Gelar 3 weeks of years. And Abimelech charged concerning him, and concerning all that was his, saying, any man that shall touch him, or aught that is his, shall surely die. And Isaac waxed strong among the Philistines, and he got many possessions, oxen and sheep and camels and asses, and a great household. And he sowed in the land of the Philistines, and brought in 100-fold. And Isaac became exceedingly great, and the Philistines envied him. Now all the wells which the servants of Abraham had dug during the life of Abraham, the Philistines had stopped them after the death of Abraham, and filled them with earth. And Abimelech said unto Isaac, go from us, for thou art much mightier than we. And Isaac departed thence in the 1st year of the 7th week, and sojourned in the valleys of Gerar. And they digged again the wells of water, which the servants of Abraham his father had digged, and which the Philistines had closed after the death of Abraham his father. And he called their names as Abraham his father had named them. And the servants of Isaac dug a well in the valley, and found living water. And the shepherds of Gerar strove with the shepherds of Isaac, saying, the water is ours. And Isaac called the name of the well Perversity, because they had been perverse with us. And they dug a second well, and they strove for that also. And he called its name Enmity. And he arose from thence, and they digged another well. And for that they strove not, and he called the name of it Room. And Isaac said, now the Lord hath made room for us, and we have increased in the land. And he went up from thence to the well of the oath in the 1st year of the 1st week, in the 44th Jubilee. And the Lord appeared to him at that night on the new moon of the 1st month, and said unto him, I am the God of Abraham thy father. Fear not, for I am with thee, and shall bless thee, and shall surely multiply thy seed as the sand of the earth, for the sake of Abraham my servant. And he built an altar there, and Abraham his father had first built. And he called upon the name of the Lord, and he offered the sacrifice to the God of Abraham his father. And they digged a well, and they found living water. And the servants of Isaac digged another well, and did not find water. And they went and told Isaac that they had not found water. And Isaac said, I have sworn this day to the Philistines, and this thing has been announced to us. And he called the name of that place the well of the oath. For there he had sworn to Abimelech, and Ahuzath his friend, and Phicol the prefect of his hosts. And Isaac knew that day that under constraint he had sworn to them to make peace with them. And Isaac on that day cursed the Philistines, and said, Cursed be the Philistines unto the day of wrath and indignation from the midst of the nations. May God make them a derision and a curse and an object of wrath and indignation in the hands of the sinners of the Gentiles. In the hands of the sinners of the Gentiles, and in the hands of the Kittim. And whoever escapes the sword of the enemy and the Kittim, may the righteous nation root out in judgment, from under heaven, for they shall be the enemies and foes of my children throughout their generations upon the earth, and no remnant shall be left to them, nor one that shall be saved on the day of the wrath of judgment. For destruction and rooting out and expulsion from the earth is the whole seed of the Philistines reserved. And there shall no longer be left for these Caphtorim a name or a seed on the earth. And though he ascend unto heaven, thence shall he be brought down. And though he make himself strong on earth, thence shall he be dragged forth. And though he hide himself amongst the nations, even from thence shall he be rooted out. And though he descended to Sheol, there also shall his condemnation be great. And there also he shall have no peace. And if he go into captivity, by the hands of those that seek his life, shall they slay him on that day, on the way, excuse me. And neither name nor seed shall be left to him on all the earth, for unto eternal malediction shall he depart. And thus it is written and engraved concerning him on the heavenly tablets, to do unto him on the day of judgment, so that he may be rooted out of the earth. Now that gets us caught up in Genesis, actually gets us a little ahead in Genesis, so that's good. Well, a lot of reading there. Any thoughts on any of that?
Well, I just love the fact that this book is said to be from the perspective of the angels, and the way that they break down each of the, they're telling time and associating of it with the 50-year Jubilee cycle. And just, you get a lot of a great detail on things that, are confirmed in the Targum, in the book of Jasher, and in other places, which is why I really like that we're doing, these parallel accounts. But then you get also the whole distinction between, because the seed of the woman and the seed of the serpent has continuation, even though like we have Adam as the father of one, the stepfather of the other, and then you have Eve, which is the mother of both. In this circumstance, you have both Abraham and Sarah being the father. He's the father of Isaac and Ishmael, and then Sarah is only connected. So it's the opposite. Instead of Eve being connected to both, Abraham here is connected to both. And then when we get to Jacob and Rebekah, we see that they are the parents of both Jacob and Esau, Isaac and Rebekah, Jacob and Esau. But we still have, as this book affirms, that there would be no Canaanites in, the whole theme of, as far as redemption and salvation, that they would be excluded and wiped out. And we see that this enmity, this war continues on up until the time of Christ. And then the Gentiles are grafted in, and then the promises and the Abrahamic covenant, which was excluded from them, is then expanded to include all people. And so that whole theme is carried forth when you recognize the distinction and the differentiation between these people groups in the early ages of history, and even the wars and the battles. Like the book of Jasher goes into great detail, as we'll be getting into the wars between Jacob and Esau, and we see that this is even a representation of Israel and Rome, and that battle, is still playing out. And even the Isaac and Ishmael, that war is ongoing, so those kind of themes will be continued, and with Christ coming back, and then the harvest, the separation of the wheat and the tares, the goat and the sheep. It's intricately interwoven into all of these stories, and most people fail to recognize because they're not taught these concepts. They don't understand, the distinction, and because of that, all the stories blend together. And I don't, for like even the genealogies, there's importance in all of that, and most people, skip over, like even the wars of the kings and all that. But Um, there's a lot of important information in all that, in my opinion.
Yeah, this account though makes it sound like it was sometime after, in the previous show, it sounded like that Jacob was preparing the lentil for the burial ceremony for Abraham, as Isaac was Isaac's taking care of Abraham's burial issues, and the firstborn should have been preparing the mourner's soup. But Esau wasn't doing it. He's out and about, and so Jacob was doing it.
Right.
This account, the Jubilees account, makes it sound like it was sometime after Abraham's death that there was a famine in the land, and that the reason Esau was willing to sell his birthright is because he was starving due to the famine. So there's and I've noticed, a fair amount of differences between Jubilees and Joshua, but I find more confirmation for Joshua, like in old text.
I agree. Right.
It's Jubilees.
Yeah,
It's kind of a wild card for me. It's like I like Jubilees, but I always kind of hold it at arm's length by comparison. It's kind of like if you have your arm all the way stretched out, that's Jubilees. If you bend your elbow so you got a 9-degree angle, that's Joshua. And if you bring your hand to your chest, that's Enoch. That's sort of the way you know what I mean? Like Enoch seems rock solid to me.
Right.
There are minor errors and discrepancies which I can write off to scribal errors or translation issues, and don't really have a problem with it because I don't see any major contradictions with Scripture that would cause me to doubt it. But the thing, as we've been finding as we've been doing this series, is that Joshua just has a ton of confirmation in Legends of the Jews and Legends of the Patriarchs and Prophets and Targums,
and the Targum,
rabbinic commentary. I mean, it just has a lot of confirmation that I don't see Jubilees backed up as much.
Yeah, that is as far as if his hunger is from this famine, because in the other stories it says that he's hungry because he's been on the run from having killed Nimrod, and the 2 king's guards, and then he's famished and he thinks he's going to die anyways, which that story will bring forth when go into the Legends of the Jews and also the Targum and others. But
yeah, cool.
It's fascinating though, because it brings more clarity to why he sold his birthright, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree completely. Like that story makes, here's a guy who's a mighty hunter, and he comes home and sells birthright for a bowl of beans. You're like, what? How does that make sense? I mean, I guess it could make sense if there was a famine and, even the animals are scarce, maybe. I just think there's a lot more support for the Joshua account than the Jubilees one. So again, I like Jubilees, but I hold it out, kind of take it with a grain of salt sometimes. But, it certainly a lot, like it makes a point of really backing up the Torah in the sense of feast days and,
honoring the law.
Yeah. And how the ordinances and all that kind of stuff works.
Right.
And like made a big point of, don't consume blood, period. Like no blood.
Right.
Certainly not human, but not even in the case of animals, which, I mean, you can read stories about like the berserkers and stuff, like the Gauls and the early Germans and whatnot. When the Romans were encountering them, they would like kill a bear and drink all the blood, and like it's almost like they took on the spirit of it, and they went berserk. I mean, they were like they would write, they're fighting animals. You know what I mean? Like
right.
I
thought the story of the wood was really cool too.
That was kind of interesting. Different.
The fragrance, the newer, younger wood, not to burn the older, dried out, because there's no savory smell.
Yeah, and I've always found that the sacrifice is interesting because the priests, while it is a sacrifice to the Lord, they ate of it. The fat, the kidneys, and different things like that they didn't eat, and the blood's poured out.
Right.
But the meat itself, so it's like Father savors the smell of it, apparently, which would say he's a localized deity. If if we if we go that route, but then the priest would get to eat the meat. So while it is a sacrifice, it's a holy, sanctified meal.
Yes.
for those that are doing the sacrifice. But it is interesting that he makes a point about, like you said, the certain types of wood that it can only be aged so much too, so that this I guess saps and the whatnot inside the wood still produce a sweet odor.
No, yes.
Also being mixed with various oils and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was very cool.
The other thing that I thought was kind of cool is that Jubilees backs up the fact that the Philistines come from Caphtor. That was in the last I read, verse 30. There shall no longer be left for these Caphtorim a name or a seat on. And I forget the numbers now. I think it was like 70 or 80 times the Amorites are mentioned, and like 200 something times the Philistines are mentioned. So there you have Canaanites and Philistines that are the big problem, of the Old Testament. Mm-hmm. And it's those people that are slated for utter destruction time and time again. They could have various military campaigns with pretty much anybody else on Earth, and it was the usual, rules of engagement. But when it came to those particular ones, it's wipe out everything, kill the women, kill the children, kill the animals, and in some cases don't even eat the food until it's had a few generations of growth to be purified. Mm-hmm. So with the
and we see the giants intermingled.
We see that Ishmael and Esau both start messing around in that line, which saw here later become the Arabs. So kind of interesting.
Yes. And with the legends of the Jews making mention that Esau had double sets of teeth. That's very interesting.
That was bizarre. Yeah, I remember you talking about that last show.
Yeah, very bizarre, right?
All right. We're going to break, so when we come back, we can take a look at Genesis, the next chapter in Genesis, and then you can...
Sounds good.
Truth Frequency Radio is your #1 source for news and information without the hate, hype, and fear. We're proud to feature cutting-edge programs like Beyond the Veil with Chris and Cherie Geo, X Squared with Brooks Agnew, Paranormal Portal with Brent Thomas, Sharonism Raw with Sharon and Missa, Fearless with Frank Castle, Strange World with Mark Sargent, The Eye of Ra with Ra Castaldo, The Infinite Fringe with Billy Ray, Ironworks with Josh Corey, The Kev Baker Show, and dozens more. Did you know you can listen from any telephone by dialing 641-793-7117 or call into your favorite show toll free at 833-TFR-LIVE. Uncensored talk and news you won't hear in the mainstream media. Truth Frequency Radio, your protection from deception.
Impeached again. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. President Trump becoming the first president to be impeached twice.
The resolution is adopted.
Democrats and 10 Republicans voted to impeach President Trump for the second time.
He must go. He is a clear and present danger to the nation.
Ohio Republican Congressman Jim Jordan countered the impeachment argument by saying this will only further divide the country.
We should be focused on bringing the nation together. Instead, Democrats are going to impeach the president for a second time 1 week before he leaves office.
The vote against President Trump comes exactly 1 week after the riot at the Capitol.
Fox's Mike Emanuel, president releasing a statement on video from the White House.
I want to be very clear. I unequivocally condemn the violence that we saw last week. Violence and vandalism have absolutely no place in our country and no place in our movement.
The president called on all Americans to overcome the passions of the moment, saying efforts to censor, cancel, and blacklist people are wrong and dangerous. Next, the House will transmit the articles of impeachment to the Senate for a trial to determine if the president should be removed from office. Senate Republican leader McConnell saying he'll not call the Senate back from recess before January 19th, the day before President-elect Biden takes office. The Senate could hold the trial after that, but Senate Judiciary Committee Chair Lindsey Graham telling Fox's Hannity that would be dangerously vindictive.
That's an unconstitutional attack on the presidency. It will divide the country. It will incite violence.
Wall Street Wednesday mixed. The Dow lost 8 points. NASDAQ gained 56. The S&P 500 added 8. And so far, no word yet whether anyone has won the more than $500 million Powerball jackpot. The winning numbers drawn late Wednesday night. America is listening to Fox News.
You're now tuned into the truth frequency.
Your protection from deception. This is Truth Frequency Radio.
And we're back on the Revolutionary Radio Project. I'm your host, Rob Skiba. We're in the second hour of the broadcast. In the previous two segments, I read through Jubilees, chapters 20 through 25. Zen, did you say you had something you wanted to get us caught up on the story from Genesis 25 before I move to Genesis 26?
As far as the birthright?
Yeah, the birthright and Nimrod and all that.
I can read from the Legends of the Jews real quick.
Okay.
Before we go into that.
Cool.
All right. This is the Legends of the Jews. Oh, let me share screen. While Esau and Jacob were little, their characters could not be judged properly. They were like the myrtle and the thorn bush, which look alike in the early stages of their growth. After they have attained full size, the myrtle is known by its fragrance, and the thorn bush by its thorns. In their childhood, both brothers went to school, but when they reached their 13th year and were of age, their ways parted. Jacob continued his studies in the Bet Ha-Midrash of Shem and Eber, and Esau abandoned himself to idolatry and an immoral life. Both were hunters of men. Esau tried to capture them in order to turn them away from God, and Jacob to turn them toward God. In spite of his impious deeds, Esau possessed the art of winning his father's love. His hypocritical conduct made Isaac believe that his firstborn son was extremely pious. "Father," he would ask Isaac, "what is the tithe on straw and salt?" The question made him appear God-fearing in the eyes of his father, because these two products are the very ones that are exempt from tithing. Isaac failed to notice, too, that his older son gave him forbidden food to eat. What he took for the flesh of young goats was dog's meat. Rebekah was more clear-sighted. She knew her sons as they really were, and therefore her love for Jacob was exceedingly great. The oftener she heard his voice, the deeper grew her affection for him. Abraham agreed with her. He also loved his grandson Jacob, for he knew that in him was his name, and his seed would be called. And he said unto Rebekah, "My daughter, watch over my son Jacob, for he shall be in my stead on the earth, and for a blessing in the midst of the children of men, and for the glory of the whole seed of Shem." Having admonished Rebekah thus to keep guard over Jacob, who was destined to be the bearer of the blessings given to Abraham by God, he called for his grandson, and in the presence of Rebekah he blessed him, and said, "Jacob, my beloved son, whom my soul loveth, may God bless thee from above the firmament, and may he give thee all the blessings wherewith he blessed Adam, and Enoch, and Noah, and Shem, and all the things of which he told me, and all the things which he promised to give me, may he cause to cleave to thee, and to thy seed forever, according to the days of the heavens above the earth." and the spirit of Mastema shall not rule over thee, or over thy seed, to turn thee from the Lord, who is thy God, from henceforth and forever. And may the Lord God be a father to thee, and mayest thou be his firstborn son, and may he be a father to thy people always. Go in peace, my son. And Abraham had good reason to be particularly fond of Jacob, for it was due to the merits of his grandson that he had been rescued from the fiery furnace. Isaac and Rebekah, knowing of Abraham's love for their young son, sent their father a meal by Jacob on the last feast of Pentecost, which Abraham was permitted to celebrate on earth, that he might eat and bless the Creator of all things before he died. Abraham knew that his end was approaching, and he thanked the Lord for all the good he had granted him during the days of his life, and blessed Jacob, and bade him walk in the ways of the Lord, and especially he was not to marry a daughter of the Canaanites. Then Abraham prepared for death. He placed 2 of Jacob's fingers upon his eyes, and thus, holding them closed, he fell into his eternal sleep, while Jacob lay beside him on the bed. The lad did not know of his grandfather's death until he called him on awakening next morning, "Father, Father," and received no answer. And though Abraham reached a good old age beyond the limit of years vouchsafed later generations, he yet died 5 years before his allotted time. The intention was to let him live to be 180 years old, the same age as Isaac at his death. But on account of Esau, God brought his life to an abrupt close. For some time, Esau had been pursuing his evil inclinations in secret. Finally, he dropped his mask, and on the day of Abraham's death, he was guilty of 5 crimes. He ravished a betrothed maiden, committed murder, doubted the resurrection of the dead, scorned the birthright, and denied God. Then the Lord said, "I promised Abraham that he should go to his fathers in peace. Can I now permit him to be a witness of his grandson's rebellion against God, his violation of the laws of chastity, and his shedding of blood? It is better for him to die now in peace." The men slain by Esau on this day were Nimrod and 2 of his adjutants. A long-standing feud had existed between Esau and Nimrod, because the mighty hunter before the Lord was jealous of Esau, who also devoted himself assiduously to the chase. Once when he was hunting, it happened that Nimrod was separated from his people. Only 2 men were with him. Esau, who lay in ambush, noticed his isolation and waited until he should pass his covert. Then he threw himself upon Nimrod suddenly and felled him and his 2 companions, who hastened to his succor. The outcries of the latter brought the attendants of Nimrod to the spot where he lay dead, but not before Esau had stripped him of his garments and fled to the city with them. These garments of Nimrod had an extraordinary effect upon cattle, beasts, and birds. Of their own accord they would come and prostrate themselves before him who was arrayed in them, and thus Nimrod and Esau after him were able to rule over men and beasts. After slaying Nimrod, Esau hastened cityward, in great fear of his victim's followers. Tired and exhausted, he arrived at the home to find Jacob busy preparing a dish of lentils. Numerous male and female slaves were in Isaac's household. Nevertheless, Jacob was so simple and modest in his demeanor that if he came home late from the Bet HaMidrash, he would disturb none to prepare his meal, but would do it himself. On this occasion, he was cooking lentils for his father to serve to him as his mourner's meal after the death of Abraham. Adam and Eve had eaten lentils after the murder of Abel, and so had the parents of Haran when he perished in the fiery furnace. The reason they are used for the mourner's meal is that the round lentil symbolizes death. As the lentils rolls, so death, sorrow, and mourning constantly roll about among men from one to the other. Esau accosted Jacob thus, "Why art thou preparing lentils?" Jacob, "Because our grandfather passed away. They shall be a sign of my grief and mourning, that he may love me in the days to come." Esau, "Thou fool, dost thou really think it possible that man should come to life again after he has been dead and has moldered in the grave? He continued to taunt Jacob. Why dost thou give thyself so much trouble? He said. Lift up thine eyes, and thou wilt see that all men eat whatever comes to hand, fish, creeping and crawling creatures, swine's flesh, and all sorts of things like these. And thou vexest thyself about a dish of lentils? Jacob, if we act like other men, what shall we do on the day of the Lord, the day on which the pious will receive their reward, when a herald will proclaim, where is he that waiteth the deeds of men? Where is he that counteth? Esau, is there a future world, or will the dead be called back to life? If it were so, why hath not Adam returned? Hast thou heard that Noah, through whom the world was raised anew, hath reappeared? Yea, Abraham, the friend of God, more beloved of him than any man, hath he come to life again? Jacob, if thou art of opinion that there is no future world, and that the dead do not rise to new life, then why dost thou want thy birthright? Sell it to me now, while it is yet possible to do so. Once the Torah is revealed, it cannot be done. Verily, there is a future world in which the righteous receive their reward. I tell thee this, lest thou say later, I deceived thee. Jacob was little concerned about the double share of the inheritance that went with the birthright. What he thought was the priestly service, which was the prerogative of the firstborn in ancient times. And Jacob was loath to have his impious brother Esau play the priest, he who despised all divine service. The scorn manifested by Esau for the resurrection of the dead, he felt also for the promise of God to give the Holy Land to the seed of Abraham. He did not believe in it, and therefore he was willing to cede his birthright and the blessing attached thereto in exchange for a mess of pottage. In addition, Jacob paid him in coin, and besides, he gave him what was more than money, the wonderful sword of Methuselah, which Isaac had inherited from Abraham and bestowed upon Jacob. Esau made game of Jacob. He invited his associates to feast at his brother's table, saying, Know ye what I did to this Jacob? I ate his lentils, drank his wine, amused myself at his expense, and sold my birthright to him. All that Jacob replied was, Eat, and may it do thee good. But the Lord said, Thou despisest the birthright. Therefore I shall make thee despised in all generations. And by way of punishment for denying God and the resurrection of the dead, the descendants of Esau were cut off from the world, as naught was holy to Esau. Jacob made him swear concerning the birthright by the life of their father, for he knew Esau's love for Isaac, that it was strong, nor did he fail to have a document made out, duly signed by witnesses, setting forth that Esau had sold him the birthright together with his claim upon a place in the cave of Machpelah. And though no blame can attach to Jacob for all this, yet he secured the birthright from him by cunning, and therefore the descendants of Jacob had to serve the descendants of Esau. The life of Isaac. Do you want me to continue?
Well, yeah, that's probably a good place to stop because that catches us up to Genesis 25. But wow.
Yeah, there's a lot packed.
Scroll back up there a little bit to the sword of Methuselah thing.
Sure. Yeah.
I only caught the tail.
Yeah, all of this too is in the book that I wrote on the vestures of light, the garments of power, which Esau took from Nimrod.
Okay.
And
you scrolled. I think you went too far. I think it's right below that.
That's it. Yeah, here it is. The wonderful sword of Methuselah, which Isaac had inherited from Abraham and bestowed upon Jacob.
Okay, so he did not believe in it. Okay, that was the priesthood, which I would maintain as the Melchizedek priesthood, the order of the ancients.
Absolutely. Right. The order of the ancients. Right.
Which is what, like I think we're talking about last show that, Jacob's like, I'm doing your job, dude. Like, if you don't, you don't want to, do the job of the firstborn, then give me your birthright. I'm doing it for you.
Right.
Right. It says, in addition, Jacob paid him in coin, and besides, he gave him what was more than money, the wonderful. So Jacob gave Esau. It says Jacob
the
paid
sword
him
of Methuselah.
Esau. So Jacob gave Esau the sword of Methuselah. What?
Right.
Wow.
Yeah, I remember the Esau lives by the sword too.
Right.
And so, he was a warrior, and that was more important to him than the priestly birthright. Yeah.
Wow, though, but like, is this the first we hear of that? Like, I don't recall Jacob ever having sort of Methuselah or Abraham having it, for that matter.
No, it's not mentioned anywhere else, but there is one other account. I can't remember exactly where it's at. I'd have to check my Vestures of Light and the Rod of Wonder book, but in it there's 2 passages which allude to the sword of Methuselah, and I can't remember where the other one is currently, but yeah, that was that was an eye opener for me too when I came across it and went over it. And in the other account, it's said to be that the sword of Methuselah is supernaturally imbued, and that it was a slaughter of the giants.
Very cool. Yeah, I don't know if I showed it to you or not. I don't remember, but I created my version of the sword of Methuselah the way I envision it for the video game that we're working on. Because I had in the video game, the way I envision it takes place in the last 150 years of the Clash of the Titans, right before Enoch is raptured. So it's that the end of the Clash of Titans series season, and Enoch's making trips back and forth to heaven and judging the Watchers and all that stuff. He's having all his visions and stuff, and taking total creative license here, just based on what available there. I thought, wouldn't it be cool as he's doing these heavenly travels, and he realizes his son has got to deal with all this stuff after he leaves, that he gives him a weapon to handle it. And I came with this, what I think is a really cool design and functionality for the sword of Methuselah that, for gameplay purposes, be fun to have. So this is all pre-flood now, pre-flood where we have very little information. So it's just a fun world to kind of play in, taking creative liberty. But here we have this text, right, showed in a post-flood account that, obviously that had to have made it onto the ark also, which later in the gameplay, I have it Methuselah giving that sword to Shem. So Shem possessing the sword of Methuselah, then obviously passing it down to eventually Abraham having it. And then we see here that he gave it to Isaac, or Isaac inherited it, I guess, after he died. And Isaac had apparently given it to Jacob, which is, that's wild, because Isaac loved Esau. Rebecca loved Jacob.
Jacob, right.
And so why Dad would give the sword to Jacob is pretty bizarre, for one thing. And then for the other, that Jacob's like, yeah, whatever, I'm more concerned with the priesthood. So he pays Esau, part of what he pays for the birthright. Because we see that in Genesis, sell me your birthright, we think that he's selling it for a bowl of beans. But in this account, it's not just, he paid him he gave him in exchange for a mess of pottage. He gives him the lentils, but it says, in addition, Jacob paid him in coin, and besides, he gave him what was more than money, the wonderful sword of Methuselah, which Isaac had inherited from Abraham and bestowed upon Jacob. That's just crazy cool.
Yeah.
But the idea that
it certainly makes more sense too.
Well, yeah, it does. I mean, the transaction there, you can kind of see, Esau didn't care for the priesthood anyway. So it's like, yeah, whatever. Yeah, I'll take the that must have been, if the story is true, that must have been foresight on the part of Isaac, because it doesn't make sense that Isaac would give Jacob, the tent boy, this incredible sword when this other son was a hunter. I mean, he was out there hunting and doing a thing.
Yes.
So it's almost like, Esau would be like, yeah, I'll take that. Here's my stupid birthright. What do I care? I don't want this stupid priest.
Right.
Give me some lentils and give me that sword. And then what happens? Is there anything that you found where the sword goes from Esau?
No, I have not seen in anything that I've read as far as a follow-up, any further information on that, other than, in the narrative it says that he lived by the sword.
Wow. Well, we saw, this story, the Legends of the Jews, again, confirmation for the Joshua account. It totally,
exactly, yes.
It tells you point blank that meal was the mourner's meal, and actually gives you an elaborated version of why they do the lentils, like why, what the purpose, meaning of the going back to Adam.
Yes, yeah, and to the murder of Abel.
That's pretty wild, man. I just had lentils for dinner, by the way. That's kind of pretty cool.
I love lentils. They're really good.
Something else jumped out at me. Oh, somebody asked a question. We didn't have time to get to it last week. And it was, okay, Esau chops off Nimrod's head. And many scholars draw the correlation between Nimrod and Osiris. And in the Osiris legend, he's hacked up by his either evil brother Set into 14 pieces, only 13 which were found. And Isis puts him back together as Frankenstein. I mean, it's really the origin of the Frankenstein story is the Osiris story. She puts him back together and then creates an obelisk to represent the missing piece. We'll just leave it at that.
The Christmas tree.
Yeah, and the Christmas tree ultimately becomes the phallic symbol of Nimrod. And the way I reconcile this is, I think, Nimrod was a tyrant. I mean, let's just face it, the dude was a tyrant. And that he was essentially, for a time anyway, he was the evil tyrant ruler of the world. Who wouldn't want to take credit for his death, right? So, we're seeing even our own government how quickly people can turn, and betray their leader, right? So, we know that Nimrod had two of his buddies with him, and the others were out and about, doing their own thing. And they heard the commotion. The others heard the commotion when Esau killed Nimrod and his two buddies. So by the time they got to Nimrod and found him dead, there were no witnesses to the murder. So, you can easily imagine them hacking him up and then, claiming that they did it. Because that would give them points. And then, by the way, it's like, the best way to deal with a bully is to beat the crap out of him. Because after you beat the crap out of the bully, he never picks on you anymore. And then all of a sudden you're like, wow, this guy beat up the bully, so all of a sudden you got this new respect, right? So I can see a very easy scenario with, if there's any truth to the Osiris myth, the Egyptian rendering of the story, if Nimrod in fact was Osiris, that perhaps he had a brother named Set that may have even been one of the other people that were out and about with him during the hunting thing, whatever. You can envision the scenario where he could have been hacked up, and then the ISIS story can take place from there. So, I find it easy to reconcile the stories. At least that's my thinking on that. Have you read anything or thought anything along those lines?
Not as far as connected with Nimrod, but I have read the story of how they tricked Osiris and the other Egyptian gods, or the fallen angel pantheon, whatever, that they tricked Osiris to get into the casket and to measured. And then after they killed him, and then they separated him into the pieces. But there is a story in the travels of Noah into Europe that speaks about the death of Osiris in that particular text. But I wanted to make one comment on the Jacob and Esau before we went to break. in the Vestures of Light and the Rod of Wonder, I talk about how they, both Jacob and Esau, because the garments were stolen from Noah, and it was his son Ham that had stolen them off of the ark. And so up until that point, the garments of power were passed on to the firstborn for the initiation into the order of the ancients. And it was the Rod of Wonder together with the garments. But after the garments were stolen, then that they became separated, and it was just the Rod of Wonder that was passed on to initiate them into the priesthood. But when Ham stole them, he passed them on to Cush, and they were hidden for a very long time. But Jacob and Esau had discovered, having heard the rumors of the power of the garments of power, and how, the animals and all the men, and how the one that wore them was, became very powerful amongst the men and even the animals. Well, it was my opinion that, and Jacob and Esau were confiding in each other even before Esau went to hunt Nimrod, that Nimrod had to have had the garments of power. And so it's my opinion that Esau, understanding this, not only did he want to kill Nimrod to take back the garments of power because he wanted to be leader of the world himself, but he also wanted to take him back for his particular bloodline, because he was then at that point still included in the lineage, the line of Adam, and part of the Abrahamic covenant, until he married, Canaanite women, and then, sold his birthright and all that, and then he became excluded. But it was Rebekah that took Esau when he came. He hid the garments of power, and it was Rebekah, the mother, that saw them and gave them to Jacob.
Hey everyone, it's Chris Gio, founder of Truth Frequency Radio and host of Beyond the Veil. The mainstream media and establishment are running scared right now, and they've prominently featured TruthFrequencyRadio.com as number 89 on the federal government's hit list, also known as the fake news list, which is essentially a list of sites slated for censorship on Facebook, YouTube, Google, and other social media. Now is the time for you to get involved. Share your favorite TFR shows far and wide on forums and social media. Tell your friends and family about your favorite shows. If you're a business owner, get in touch with us to feature your product or service right here on TFR. And if you haven't done so already, become a TFR supporter now and get unlimited commercial-free downloads in high quality. Visit truthfrequencyradio.com/sign-up. Thank you for making TFR the leader in independent and uncensored talk radio. Truth Frequency Radio, your protection from deception.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7, with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
If you have hard water, the Lime Scale not only leaves white spots, it clogs pipes and breaks down appliances, costing you hundreds of dollars in energy and wear. Eliminate Lime Scale and other water issues like brown staining and bad odors with HydroCare water products, available from Wave Home Solutions. Wave's affordable water systems don't use salts or chemicals. You'll love the way your water tastes, smells, and looks. Satisfaction guaranteed. For more information, go to bestwater123.com. That's bestwater123.com.
We exist in the security and comfort of our worlds. Paved paths, lights, and manicured lawns give us peace of mind that our world has been tamed, and we are its master. But other worlds exist on the edge of our sight. On the edge of our awareness, the shadows move. The woods is filled with the unblinking eyes of the nightmares our ancestors warned us about. Some of us have stumbled into these forgotten realms, whether on purpose or completely by surprise. I'm Brent Thomas. Join us on the Paranormal Portal Friday and Saturday nights from 10 p.m. to midnight Pacific Standard Time as we journey into the world of the paranormal phenomena.
Enter the Paranormal Portal if you dare.
Real people, real radio. Wherever you are, make it TFR. Truth Frequency Radio.
And we're back on the Revolutionary Radio Project. I'm your host, Rob Skiba, and we're in the final half-hour segment of the broadcast. And right before the break, we're talking about some really cool stuff. Wow. So the Rod of Wonder and the Garment of Power, what's the origin of the rod?
The rod is said to be a limb from the Tree of Life. Yeah, the Tree of Life, and that it was inscribed with the Tetragrammaton and also 4 of the patriarchs, 6 of the matriarchs, and the 10 plagues of Egypt. So they knew, that there would come a time that these plagues would come upon Egypt and that God would lead them out of that enslavement.
So those markings were on it before it all happened? Like, in other words,
yes, it was.
There's a prophetic markings on the rock.
Right.
Wow.
They were all prophetic. Yeah.
That's fascinating.
And it was said to be like a sapphire stick, in some manner.
So, we know that Cush got the garments, held onto them, and gave them to Nimrod. But who ended up with the rod?
The rod, after Adam, it went to Enoch, and then to Noah, then to Shem, then to Abraham, and was passed on then to... Yeah, Abraham had it, and it was passed then to Isaac and also Jacob, and then it was reunited afterwards, and Jacob gave it to Judah, but then Judah gave it to Tamar, when he laid with her, and then Jacob took it back and then gave it to Joseph. And then when Joseph died, it ended up in Pharaoh's inventory in the warehouses. And then Ruel, Jethro, the father-in-law of Moshe, he took it because he was an advisor to Pharaoh. But when Jannes and Jambres told Pharaoh to start bathing in the blood of young Hebrew children, Ruel left and went eastward, and he took from the Egyptians who had taken it from Joseph, the Rod of Wonder and the Garments of Power. And then these were given to Moshe. And, and reunited with Moshe after that.
Dude, we're gonna have some fun when we finally sit down and start writing the Enoch script.
Yeah, I know.
There's
so much, I know.
Much cool stuff that we can be talking about and put in there, in dramatic format.
Right.
So Jacob, he had both then. He had the rod and the garment. Or no, Esau had the garment. Esau had the garment.
Right.
Nimrod
had the garment.
Nimrod had the garment, but Esau
had the garment. Yes.
So
from him, yes.
Did Nimrod also have the rod, or did that retain? Did Shem have that?
That was Shem had that and passed it on to Abraham, and then Abraham gave it to Isaac, and it was passed on to Jacob.
Wow. Okay. So, and Shem, we know that Shem's been sticking around for a while. He's still around, probably even at this time in the story. At least was in one of the recent ones. Anyway, I don't know if he's still around at this point, but yeah, he was, because he outlives Abraham. So
right, he lived 600 years.
Wow. So Shem and Shem is, he would have trained up Abraham probably. Well, Shem would have trained up Eber, who probably ended up training, because we see in some of the previous texts we did that it was a school of Shem, and Eber's still around too.
Eber, right.
And he's Eber's from which we get the word Hebrew, from Eber. So Abraham, being a distant descendant, but sort of adopted into the immediate ancestors, Shem and Eber, and being trained up as the Melchizedek, having at least the rod, because if Nimrod's out with the garment, then Esau. Now you're saying Jacob and Esau were aware of these stories. They heard about these things. And so was that's the motivation for why Esau wanted to kill Nimrod? Because he's like, I'm going to get that.
I believe so. Yes, he wanted to get the garments of power back from him, and he began to hunt him. And he knew, because Nimrod became the leader of the world, and all the animals would prostrate themselves before him. And in the book of Jasher, we're showed that it was him and even a smaller number of fighters that were able to secure, the authority over all the other tribes of the children of Japheth and the children, because he's from the children of Ham, and so they were able to secure the power over the children of Shem and Japheth.
Right.
And so yes, Esau knew, and that's why in that book, The Vestures of Light and the Rod of Wonder, I write about how that was the motivation for Esau to begin to hunt Nimrod, was to take back the garments of power, which that was, even in the story that we saw here in the Legends of the Jews, and also in the book of Jasher, after he killed him, he stripped him of those garments before making his escape.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, I mean, in my first book, Babylon Rising, I try to show the correlations that with various so-called deities, little g gods of antiquity, being derived from the story of Nimrod, and Gilgamesh being one of them. And he, famous depiction of Gilgamesh the giant with his pet lion under his arm.
Right.
He's got a lion under his arm, like he's, hey, this is my pet lion I carry around here. Yeah, so that's really wild, man. So and it makes me think too, because Esau despised his birthright, and because of that, Esau became known as Edom. And I don't want to go down this rabbit trail because it's a whole other series of shows we could do on this alone. But who the Edomites are today that are in fact ruling the world. So
yes, right.
Do you think somewhere in the hierarchy of the elite, someone still of the Edomites still has this garment? Speculation.
No, only because the conclusion for that book is that Christ returns with them in Revelation 19:13, where he is clothed in the vesture dipped in blood. Remember when Jacob after he takes it back from Judah, gives it to Joseph. And the coat of many colors is this garment of power. And when they killed the kid and dipped it in the blood, this is what it's speaking about, the vesture dipped in blood. And so Christ returns with both the garments of power and the rod of wonder.
What?
What's that?
I was
at the end of days.
Wow, dude. So
it's a mind-blowing story.
Yeah, on the Virtual House Church, when we were going through the portions dealing with Joseph, I was telling people, and this is a fun exercise to do, just for anybody out there even listening now, is to get a piece of paper, draw a line down the center of the page, and a horizontal line at the top of the page, so you have like the shape of a cross, and above the horizontal line on the left of the vertical line, write Joseph, and on the right, write Yeshua or Jesus, and then so now I got two columns there. Come up with as many parallels between the life of Joseph and the life of Yeshua that you can come up with. And the first time I was challenged to do that, just off the top of my head, just hey, do this. Okay. I sat down and it came up with like 25, 20, 23, 25, something like that, just off the top of my head. And I was in a group of people that were all doing that. And then we all shared what we had. And, all together, we had something like 50 or more parallels between the two. And I mean, even the Hebrews, the Israelites, the Jews, they have an understanding of Messiah ben Joseph and Messiah ben David. That as they read the Torah, the scriptures, they saw like, okay, there seems to be, they didn't know if it was two characters or one, which is interesting too, because when they challenged John the Baptist, they ask him, are you the prophet, capital P, right? No. Are you the Messiah? No. Well, we know as Christians, we understand the prophet, capital P, likened unto Moses, is Yeshua, who is the Messiah. So we bring them both into one. We say, he's the prophet like unto Moses, who is the Messiah. But they asked him as if there's two. They said, are you the Messiah? No. Are you the prophet? No. So that's interesting. So this is an even more intriguing parallel of the life of Joseph, that Jacob gives him this, because Genesis doesn't tell you where. I always just read it like he made the coat, like he sewed together a colorful garment, or his wife or somebody did, and he gave that to Joseph. Oh, here's this beautiful, because we see Joseph in the Technicolor dream coat or whatever, these dramatic presentations that people do. But you're saying that no, this coat of many colors was actually the garment that God made when he killed the animal and clothed Adam with this. And then, wow. So when when the brothers betrayed Joseph, they betrayed their brother and they dipped the coat of many in blood and said, see, Dad, your son must have been, and this
mauled by an animal.
So okay, well then we're in between right now, because Yeshua hasn't come back yet. He's coming back with the garment dipped in blood. You're saying it's this garment. Well, where is it now?
Yes. I'm assuming it's with him. The last what, say that again?
So it got taken up at some point?
Yeah, that's what I can only assume that. I don't know with any certainty, but I know that he returns with it. I mean, it could be still here on the earth and, protected and preserved by one of the two bloodlines, but without a doubt, the Revelation 19:13, where he returns dressed, wearing the vesture dipped in blood, that is that garment of many power, the coat of many colors that they tried to pass off, and that Joseph had died and been mauled by an animal, and that is the garments of power that connects back to Adam, because both the tree of life, the limb that was given to him, that is the rod of iron that Yeshua returns with to rule over all the nations. And so both of these items that were given to Adam when he was banished from paradise, and they were given to him by the word of the Lord. And so Christ, is telling him these prophecies of how he's going to return. He's going to be born of a virgin 5,500 years after he's exiled from paradise, and he gives them these items. And he also tells them about, how the frankincense and the myrrh, and also the gold that he gives them, how he's going to lead the magi, the order of the magi, to these items to bring them to his birthplace. Because he leads them to the cave of treasures, and they grab these items, and then they come to where he's born in Bethlehem, and they bring these items as an offering to him. But in the primary Adamic literature, the first book of Adam and Eve, he tells Adam that as a prophecy, that he's going to have, as he's given him these items, and that they represent, his kingship, his dominion, and other things. There's symbols behind each one of those items, and that, and also the prophecy, because he gives them those items, and also the tree of life, the limb from the tree of life, which is his staff, and then the garments of power, which he clothes him with as he removes him from paradise. So these 5 items would have significance all throughout the patriarchs and the prophets, and they would return with Christ. Not only would these 3 items come to him, be brought to him at his birth, but he would return with the vestures dipped in blood and the rod of iron, which were the items he gave to Adam when banishing him initially from paradise. So it's a full circle.
Wow. So when it says in the scepter shall not depart from Judah, do you think it's referring to that Judah ended up actually? It's not just a metaphor. I've always just read it, that we know that the priesthood goes to Levi and the kingship goes to Judah, and that it would be an everlasting kingship because Yeshua is the ultimate everlasting king that comes from Judah. And so I always just took it as, metaphorically speaking, the kingship shall be bestowed to you and never leave you. But do you think that was more than just a symbolic reference, that it may have been an actual reference to this physical thing, this scepter, this rod of power, shall never depart from the line of Judah?
Right. Yes, absolutely. Because as I cover in that book also, that it was in Christ, as there's a book on the priesthood of Jesus Christ that speaks about how Mary is not only from the Aaronic priesthood, but she is also from the line of kings and the line of Judah. Right. And so Christ was the marriage of those 2 items back together, and that the priesthood of Levi and the kingship of Judah were restored in him, and he was both, king, prophet, and priest.
Yeah, because that's why he is the king priest, which is the Melchizedek.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
Wow, man, that's really cool. Just my head's going in a million directions right now, just thinking of cool storylines that I can weave with. Well, I'm pretty sure you sent me that book. I'm gonna have to go dig that one out of my Zen library.
It's an amazing story. Yeah, you should definitely read it. Because just one other thing, really quickly. This staff also was the one that Joseph was in possession when he became the guardian of Mary, and where it says in the Isaiah, the story of the stem of Jesse, that story relates to the staff and to Christ being of the lineage of Jesse, who was the father of King David. And the staff, when Joseph brought it forth, because he didn't want to take Mary on as wife, because he was an old man, an elderly man, and she was a young virgin. But supernaturally, God intended him to be her caretaker. And so when he brought forth this staff in front of the priest Simeon and the priests, the people of Israel, it bloomed a rosebud at the end, and a dove came forth and landed upon it. And then that was how it was signified that he would be the one to be her caretaker and her guardian.
So wait a minute. So this wouldn't be then, it couldn't be the same staff that Aaron had. The Aaron staff butted. It's got to be a different one because Aaron, that one ended up in the Ark of the Covenant.
It's a different one. Yeah, no, right. And this was Moshe's staff, the one that he
used to split the Red Sea, all that.
Yes, right. Split the Red Sea, and also that they conquered the giants of Canaan. Remember, he had to hold the staff up, and when his arms got tired. Yeah.
Right. Wow.
And it's the one that he hit the rock and brought forth the water. These are also miracles associated with the rod of wonder.
And that's so he used this rod in disobedience because he said, "Speak to the rock, don't." And he struck it.
And don't hit it. Yes. Right.
Wow, that's very cool. Man, that's very cool. The other thing I was just thinking back on the I don't remember I think it was what I was reading in the Jubilees account about the issue of the ages dropping, people's years not living as long.
Mm-hmm.
And it's his days shall be 70 years, 80th by strength. That's what is that? Psalm 90 verse 10, I think.
Psalm 90, 10, yeah.
Yeah. So David, well, it depends on when you recognize the authorship of Jubilees. I can't find any evidence that it predates about 200-ish BC. Do you? I mean, like Joshua, Enoch, there's plenty of evidence in my mind anyway that it at least exists in full format, and then it was written down later, but dates back to Enoch pre-flood. And that Joshua was contemporary with the Torah because in Joshua, the next book after Deuteronomy, it says, "Is it not written in the book of Joshua that Joshua commanded this still?" So being Joshua covers the same period of time that we read about in the Exodus and the conquest of Joshua, that it had to be contemporary with the Torah. So I can't find any, I'm not aware of any confirmation that would trace Jubilees back to anything other than what's typically associated with the Dead Sea Scrolls dating.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. Me either. But I always tend to, give credence to the contents of the story, and that even if somebody rewrote them later from a scroll or a manuscript or parchment, that the original story, I believe, came about as it is spoken about within the context of the manuscript. Yeah.
So
and
then
that passed down, and rewritten perhaps later by other scribes.
So I guess the reason I was bringing that up is to see where did David get that from? Because David says, because by the time David is alive, that's the lifespan. So I always just assumed David's like, you know what? Hey, if you live to 80, good for you. You're strong. Most guys die at 70. That's what I always took it to mean. But depending on when we are to understand the writing of Jubilees, it could be that David got that from Jubilees, and also
right.
I think it was Jubilees 24 correlates very well with Isaiah 65. If a child dies or if a person dies at 100, he's considered a child. And
yes.
Like if you just
read
the
gray hairs, that's part of prophecy as well. That a child would have gray hairs.
And that everybody lives in peace. That's all Isaiah 65 and
yes,
60,
absolutely.
65 and 66. Wow. Wow. Well, we only got 3 minutes left in this broadcast. So this is good though, man. A lot of cool stuff to chew on. So if people wanted to get that book, because you've been talking about it quite a bit, why don't you tell people how they can get the Rod of Power Garments book?
Yeah, all of my books you can find at sacredwordpublishing.com. If you sign up for our newsletter, we always send out like 20%, 15%, sometimes even during the the Black Friday at 30% off coupon, and people can load up on our books if they want, because there's a lot of ancient manuscripts there, but this one is specifically called The Vestures of Light and the Rod of Wonder, and it has all of this that we've been talking about in it, and it covers it from Adam all the way to the return of Yeshua at Revelation 19:13, as we spoke about earlier.
And so in that book, what you're just drawing from various resources like Legends of the Jews and anything else you can find that mentions these?
So many, yes. The Legends of the Jews, the Legends of the Patriarchs and the Prophets, the Perkei Rabbi Eleazar, the Book of Jasher, the Targum, so many ancient manuscripts, the legends, just different collections, anywhere that I could find stories about either the garments or the Rod of Wonder, I include it and, take it from the beginning, from Adam being cast out of paradise all the way to the return, the second coming of Christ. Because there's another prophecy about the 10 kings and how the two bloodlines, the power would be passed back and forth between them, and these relics, these sacred relics, the garments and the power and the Rod of Wonder, would play a key role in the power and the control, and who would have and hold that power during that particular time and those particular kings. And so that's also an important part of the story.
Very cool. We only got a minute left, but did you read all those books, or did you have some kind of search mechanism that you just did a keyword search?
No. Well, I did read all of them, but yeah, I have all of them in Word because I put them together and printed them in larger font so I could read them for myself. So yeah, I just word search, the Word files. And so, yeah, it makes it easier for me because I have all those files in Word, and I can do that.
Fantastic. Always a pleasure, man. I always enjoy talking with you. I always learn something new every time, man. It's great stuff. So we'll talk crypto on my show next week and continue the dialogue on your show next Thursday.
All right, man. Be blessed. Good night, all.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us for this video and this broadcast. We appreciate all of you, and thank you for your patronage. Please do like and subscribe and share with your friends. God bless all of you in your seeking.